If you're a CEO who's kicked off an ERP project or is about to, here's something worth hearing about upfront. Whether this works has very little to do with you or the software you picked or even the vendor. It doesn't come down to how technical you are. It comes down to three important decisions, which are yours to make. Today, we're talking about ERP projects and the three things a leader can own to ensure that theirs is successful. It's so common to hear about a horror story with an ERP. It's almost like everybody has one to tell. The numbers really do back this up. Gartner projects that by 2027, more than 70% of recently implemented ERP initiatives will fail to fully meet their original business case goals, with as many as 25% failing catastrophically. With that in mind, when you look at the projects that do succeed, it's not that they have better software or even bigger budgets. They have a leader who stayed close to three specific decisions: scope, change, and resources. I'm Sarah Wilson. I'm a fractional COO and operational turnaround partner for founder-led SMB. I help businesses struggling with complexity and challenges within the operational core of their business. I work with founders to install scalable, repeatable processes that unlock scale with the tools and teams they already have.
And hi, I'm Penny Cook. I'm also a fractional COO and a strategic operations consultant, helping product and consumer brands install, upgrade, and run scalable operations and operational systems that reflect the founder's unique vision and ambition. And let's get into it. Sarah, ERP initiatives are so fraught for so many companies. They are often expensive, they are time consuming, there are very high North Stars for organizations, and they are usually more complex and more difficult to implement than what was initially planned. So, to that end, our first tip to have a successful implementation is to know your scope and hold the line on that scope. At a kickoff, the scope generally seems clean, and I would challenge you to make sure it is. Have an agreed upon list of requirements. And as the project moves, the team is going to have very good reasons. They're going to be very compelling, especially the people who are right in the line of doing the work, to add just one more thing to the scope for that launch. It's natural. And this is exactly where, as leaders, we have the most impact during these ERP implementation initiatives. A good PM can flag scope creep, but they can't resolve it when there are cross-departmental challenges, especially when there are department heads involved who feel like they have a stake in this specific feature that they want to get on the list. That call needs to be made by someone with authority. That's you, right?
Exactly. And when it comes to requirement gatherings, one tip I like to give to leaders to watch out for is ask yourself that question of that requirement. Is that a requirement that is a need to have to run our business, right? Is that data point so important we actually make decisions from it? Or is it there because we've always done it that way? So the we've always done it that way things are, I think, the biggest things I get leaders to watch out for and ask themselves, and of course ask the person who's making that request that kind of difficult question.
Yeah. To bring this home, Sarah, a real world example to share is, picture a mid-sized company, founder-led consumer products brand where the company kicked off an ERP project to fix inventory and fulfillment, which are for growing companies. Those are some of the first things that kind of get out of alignment as a company starts to find some success and grow. Those are pain points, and it is really common to look to an ERP solution for those. Great energy at the start, but the next few months, every department head brings the project team their wish list, custom reports, a bespoke returns flow and integration nobody had scoped before. And the team wants to be helpful, and they are compelled by these arguments from these departments that it needs to solve their problems out of the gate. They say yes to most of it. because they want to do a good job and they want their internal customers to be happy. But none of this gets weighed against the original timeline and budget. Go live slips, costs climb, and the system that ends up getting launched is so complicated that it's very hard to onboard onto, right? So good intentions where you really want your internal constituency to have a functional end product, actually it works the other way, right? This was late, it was expensive, and it was more complicated than the team was able to take on.
Yes, exactly. And that really brings us nicely into the second topic. The second tip we have is really around change management and the signals that you send as a leader to the organization. It really sets the tone for how this is going to go. ERP goes beyond that. This is not just software. It is software, but it's a fundamental shift on how people are going to run the business day to day. So how you show up as a leader, the tone you set, and the being mindful of the change management principles in your leadership practice are key to success, because we can often think that an ERP is very much an IT project. And while, of course, IT has a really big stake to play, the success and conversely the failure that might come from this really is setting the tone. So what does that mean? Setting the tone from a leader's perspective for change management, it comes down to step one, acknowledging, what's hard, what's challenging, hearing people out, understanding, ensuring your team is feeling heard when they, go through that process of change within the organization. I believe passionately in this project. Here's why, here's the business impact, and here's why the hard work you're going to do as a team to get through this challenging part that's coming, and why that's so important and critical for success of the project.
Yeah, Sarah, I don't think we can emphasize that enough in how important it is to acknowledge when work changes, when expectations changes, or even when the screen, the appearance of the screen in the tool that they're using changes. It really impacts the way people do work. The worst implementation I've seen is where after the implementation, most of the team was still doing most of their work on Post-its stuck around their monitor because they never fully onboarded into what these processes were, and they didn't feel like the work they needed to do was considered. The best implementation was where the team felt like their fingerprints were all over it, and they knew exactly, not only did they know exactly what to do, they felt like they designed this new process to be better for them than what their previous process were. And I juxtapose those because one didn't take into account what people's actual experience using these things were, and one really involved the team to its fullest, set expectations, supported them, and came out with a product that everyone knew how to use, was excited to use, and felt like they were really part of the solution. And both of those, the problem and the solution, both of those start with leadership and the tone that they set for what this change in the workforce is going to be like.
I would invite leaders to think of themselves as like a chief change officer. It's never going to go on your email signature, right? Yeah. It's not going to go on the business card, but it is. Yeah, exactly. It's an important role that a leader has within a project like this. And then, of course, it's really something that is exercised throughout the entire project from start to finish. What you do, how you carry yourself, how the language you use when it comes to the change that's coming has a material impact on how the organization as a whole is going to react to and move through the ERP change.
That's right. And there's so many creative ways to do it in keeping with your style and your culture. And that's a great lead-in, Sarah, to our third tip in having a successful ERP implementation is around resourcing, protecting your best people's time. These initiatives happen on top of operational work that is already going on, and your instinct may be to pull your best people to manage it, which means that you're overloading their time and something's going to give. So, day jobs have real gravity, especially on operations teams. We are the infrastructure that makes the business tick. And every resource, every minute that we take off of that means that we are not We are not in control of what we want to be. And so you have to be really deliberate with your plan, deliberate on how you're resourcing these things, and watch very carefully how time gets divided up between the regular rhythm of the business, the expectations, the reason that people are there in the first place, and these initiatives that you put on top of that daily workload.
That's so key. Another thing I'd add as a really good net benefit of being mindful of that is there's a real opportunity to maybe take those players on the team or staff members who you didn't think of as your best, or you thought, you didn't want them on necessarily right away. There's some development opportunity there. There's
Big time.
opportunity
Yes.
for your very best to train and to support and to develop those team members with great potential to move from mid-tier to being one of your best people.
Using initiatives as succession planning is a very sophisticated move, I believe. This is also a great place, Sarah, to consider a consultant or fractional, someone who is expert at coming into your business, quickly sizing up the need, integrating themselves, and helping to bring real solutions that are customized to your organization, right? This isn't I'm an ERP specialist in this kind of tool, whatever. I'm coming just to do this implementation that I do templated to every business. There is potentially some merit in that, but really understanding not just the tool, but the process around the tool, the resources you have, and your unique business situation. How do you customize these things to make sure that this is long-term usable and up levels all of the work going on in your organization? So finding either the right person in your organization, the right combination of people in your organization, or someone who is expert at doing that from outside your organization.
So here's what we'd leave you with. The headline number on those projects is unreal, but a little bit misleading, because what separates the ones who succeed from the ones who don't, of course, again, I'll say it again, not the technology and not the deep pockets. It's the leader who stayed close to a few decisions that nobody else in the building really has the authority to make. And that's genuinely good news, because that means you have, as a leader, the tools in your toolkit to make this a success. So if you're leading one of these or about to, the three important things to remember. First, own the scope. Doesn't mean you have to be in every configuration meeting, but you want to be the one holding the line on what the project is and, of course, what it isn't. And every yes has a trade-off. And so those trade-offs are your decision to make. And of course, leading the change. Again, ERP is not just a software swap. It is changing the way the business is run. That's shifting how people work. And of course, your team is going to take it as seriously and are going to be as engaged as you are. So keep showing up and keep explaining to the team why it matters. And lastly, protect your resources. Putting your best person on the project may or may not be the right move. You want the best people involved, of course, but keep in mind what happens to their day to day. And resourcing is an ever evolving thing, of course. It's not a set it and forget it. It's an activity that you will be tackling throughout the entire project. So if this episode gave you something useful, share it with another leader who's taking on an ERP project or working on one to get it back on track.
Get that back on track.
Exactly. And if you're looking to actually do this work, getting the governance right, staying engaged, or putting the right people in the right places, this is exactly the kind of thing that Penny and I help teams with. Reach out to us on LinkedIn or the Operating on Purpose website. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to wherever you listen. We'd love to talk about what the right approach could look like for your business.
Because great businesses don't just happen.
They operate on purpose. Thanks,
Thanks,
Penny.
Sarah. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. See you next time.